Zoom grants. I think that is it.
Okay, so we have gotten so many questions in chat. I'm excited to start the conversation and get this ball rolling. I'm glad for the enthusiasm in the room. So can we stop sharing the screen so maybe we can see each other's faces and kind of get to know each other a little bit better? Okay, so how do we want to go about this? Do we want to just start reading the questions that showed up in the chat first?
That sounds great to me.
Okay. So there was one question about what this RFP was for. It was for if it was for organizations who need the support or for organizations to provide that support. And I hope it's clear at this point that it's to provide that support to other organizations that will either be Best Start's grantees or potential applicants. So there's a question from Brenda. When are you envisioning that the capacity building work would begin?
So we anticipate that contracts will be able to get started in late January, early February. For capacity building, sorry, go on, Victoria.
No, go ahead.
Well, one point that we were thinking about is that capacity building in general has sort of ramps up as people hear about it, as our BSK funded organizations become funded and then hear about the free capacity building that they can get through BSK. And so sometimes there's a ramp up period, but that could be dependent on how many organizations were funded previously in Best Start's the first levy, and they already know about capacity building. So if many of those do get funded again, they'll want to start capacity building right away once they get funded again through the second levy.
And there was a related question. It was a little bit further down, but on the question of timing, the RFQ says notification of awards will be in January 2022. Last cycle, this was followed by an intense planning process before clients began to be served. Will this be true again? And if so, how might that process be structured?
That we are not planning on having a large planning period, no. We have learned so many great things through the first levy, and we're really excited about putting that learning into practice in the second levy. So although one thing that really came out of that was that we created a very collegial group that worked together and learned from each other. We had quarterly convenings. We do plan on doing that again and making sure that the capacity builders they know each other very well. They're sharing best practices with each other, and that will happen again. But we do not anticipate a big planning period at the beginning.
And I would just add that we really want to get to the technical assistance quickly, because there will be RFPs opening in January. And usually there's a few weeks where you don't hear anything from CBOs, and then kind of as a deadline for the RFP approaches, that's when a lot of people will start calling and asking for support. So so technical assistance is really like the most urgent thing that we want to make sure we get the contracts in place for. There was also a question on what is the lowest and highest number of hours you're looking for from TA and capacity building providers?
No, that we don't have a minimum or a maximum, but this is entirely driven by the needs of the organizations. And if they have, and you've provided a certain number of hours, that's what you bill for. You bill for that exactly. So if you are, not asked to do a number of hours, then you're not going to be billing. But no, we don't have a minimum and maximum.
And there was a question of, are the capacity builders committing to 3 years if they have the contracts? Are the contracts 3-year contracts? Is that your question?
Yes, they're 3-year contracts. It'll be slightly less than 3 years if we get the contract started in February. So, but we're anticipating ending December 31st of 2024.
Can I follow on that question?
Sure.
So if you sign as a CB or a TA provider, you sign a 3-year contract, is it for like a set amount and then you can bill up to that amount, or okay.
It is, yes. That's why it's so important to fill in general question number 6, where you tell us the number of hours that you're able to provide each month to BSK organizations. That will help us to develop the scope of the contract and the amount. And so, yes, the contract will be have a ceiling on it. And then over that 3 years, each month you'll draw down against that total.
And then just one more quick follow on that. If you bill down, that amount goes down, and then by the end of the year, you haven't used it, does it roll over?
So the contract is a 3-year contract, and that technically, yes, it's not going to be a year-to-year contract for the consultants. It's a 3-year contract. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. There's a question, is there a schedule of BSK check-ins envisioned?
BSK check-ins.
I think we're talking about like the meetings with
Quarterly
the quarterly convenings. Is that what it is?
Brenda, is that what you meant? Where the consultants would meet together to check in about what's going on with Best Starts for Kids, hear what's new, and learn from each other?
Yeah, so to clarify, I'm curious if there's separate check-ins with BSK that are like on a monthly basis or something like that, as well as quarterly convenings with other consultants.
Well, so we do require the monthly invoices. It's not a check-in, it's not a personal call or Zoom, but we ask the consultants to submit monthly invoice and monthly tracker, which provides us information with who you're serving and how many hours you're serving them, and what kinds of capacity building topics that you're covering, and whether it's ongoing or complete.
I would just add a couple quick things for data and evaluation capacity builders. We don't envision additional ongoing meetings, but there might be some initial further trainings and orientations to share Best Starts for Kids evaluation and reporting information with you, so you kind of have that context if you are working with a partner around that. And I would also add that Georgie and I are always available to answer questions or help address challenges that come up. So, we don't have planned monthly check-ins with all of our capacity building contractors, but our doors are absolutely open.
Yeah, good point. And I think that I talked to many contractors via email or by phone every month or every couple months. So I also wanted to mention that the general CB providers will also be receiving some compliance monitoring, like when an organization is a BSK partner, what kind of compliance monitoring is required of them. We're going to be providing training on that to our general capacity builders as well, so that you understand what legal and HR and financial systems we require to be in place.
So Salam, I want to make sure I'm pronouncing your name right. Has a question. Are CBs, capacity builders, expected to be available to CBOs anytime, weekday, weekends, work hours, and evenings?
You want to answer that, Victoria, or do you want me to?
I think there is no answer. That has never been brought up to us as a question. I would say that for capacity building, you can pretty much expect to stick to your regular weekday hours, but I think each individual contractor has to decide what works for them. If you want to work on weekends, or if you are recognizing that a CBO is only able to do capacity building work on evenings, then see if there are ways that you can meet those needs. With technical assistance, I will say that last time we had a requirement that if an organization had to request for technical assistance 3 business days before the deadline of the RFP, so that nobody was calling you like the day before or midnight the night before and saying like, I need help writing this, this application. I do know that there were some some technical assistance providers who had the ability to work many, many, many hours and they were willing to do it, and others who couldn't. So you just have to set your own parameters.
All right, Karen Cowgill asked a good question. On the application, she thinks it's narrative question 3B. I think you're right. It asks to describe the diversity of community-based organizations. Do we need to provide information on each of those elements for each CBO that we've worked with, or are those examples of elements we might include? You're right, it's the second. These are just examples, the things that we put in the parentheses, for example, size, cultures, languages, urban or rural, organizational mission. Those are just examples of elements that you might include in your description, which can show that you've served a diversity of CBOs.
I'm going to jump ahead. We answered Brenda's question about the contracting period. So there's a question from Veronica. Would a government agency be an acceptable reference?
So the answer, I think, depends upon whether you did provide technical assistance or capacity building to that government agency. And so probably not. What we're looking for is a community-based organization that you've served, 2 at least, that you've provided some sort of technical assistance around helping them with a funding opportunity, or you've helped them with legal, IT, organizational development, strategic planning, HR, marketing, that type of capacity building. So I think that probably wouldn't work unless you have a really specific example of when you've provided that sort of help to a government agency.
Well, I do. It's a county juvenile justice center, and so we were evaluating their detention programs that are designed to help them move out of the criminal justice system and not come back, basically. And whether that was equitably being provided by race and gender, and giving them recommendations how to improve the equity of the program. So so it just seemed, and it was also multilingual and things like that. So it seemed very relevant, even though, and it's the kind of work that we've done with CBOs, but it is a county juvenile justice center. So that was why I was acting, but we can use other references.
Okay, if you think that there's something else that might better serve you to showcase what your organization will do, that in terms of what we're looking for, we're
Right.
serving community-based organizations, then I would do 2 other references. But it does sound like you did some similar work.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's a question. Will you accept and equally consider references and work examples that have arisen for volunteer or board service experiences rather than just our paid clients?
References or work examples that have arisen for volunteer or board service experiences. I think.
Go ahead, Georgie.
Go ahead. Well, I was thinking that if the experience that you had working as a board member, for example, was a situation in which you were providing capacity building help for the infrastructure of this organization, and you can give some really specific examples that are, in terms of what we are talking about in this RFQ, then I think that would work. What do you think, Victoria?
I think so. I think it's maybe it doesn't, I don't think I see a distinction between whether it's volunteered or paid. I think it's you demonstrating your capability in providing particular services, not who's necessarily always the recipient of it. It would be helpful, though, I think, when we think about community-based organizations who are such a big share of our awardees, that we want to make sure that that you have shown the ability to work with community-based organizations from different communities, different backgrounds, and are able to work with a wide range of groups like that. Does that make sense? There was a question about uploading info session. Oh, so where is this info session being uploaded to again, Georgie?
So if you click on this opportunity and you're logged into Zoom Grants, you should see a button that says Show Library. It's a blue button. When you click on that and scroll down, you'll see some things that are uploaded, and the slides from this are uploaded right now. If you want to see this recording again, you can click on the FAQ document, and the very first thing in that FAQ document is a link to the October 12th recording of this session. We will add the recording of today's session as well. Does that answer that, Elizabeth? Okay, great.
And just to note, I did drop a link in the chat. The October 12th recording is also on the blog. You can find it there too.
Great. Thanks, Sergey.
Okay, here's a question, two-part question from Brenda. It says, this RFQ has a new administration cost reimbursement rate for the contract that was lowered from $150 in BSK 1.0 to $87.50 per hour. Can you explain this change?
Well, we were looking at what some of the other contractors were doing, and they were billing us only half the cost for any hours that were not directly related to client service. The $150 per hour was meant for client services, and the administrative costs are kind of thought of being built into that $150 an hour. Now it's been raised to $175 an hour, so $87.50 is half of that. So we're not expecting people will bill very often for this administrative hour. There was already a rule that if you had any travel time, you could bill for that travel time at half the hourly rate, which was $75 an hour last time in the last levy. So now that's been raised to $87.50. We're just saying any additional admin hours, which would be things like we had a meeting, we have a big staff, we had to discuss how we were designating the capacity building jobs within our staff. We talked about best starts for a half an hour. We're going to bill for that half hour. You would bill at the $87.50 rate. So that was what we wanted to make a change there, to make it just more clear that what admin charges were. The second part of the question is, do administrative costs include reimbursement for training of new staff or staff who are new to Best Starts for Kids? No, we consider training of your new staff to be a cost of doing business. So that's how we've dealt with that in the past. Do you have anything to add, Victoria?
Mm-mm. So someone, Nancy tried to see the boilerplates today and wants to know, she just wants to know, what are the insurance requirements? Do you remember that off the top of your head?
So it's liability insurance. And Nancy, did you see the link that I put in the chat? I can do that again.
Yes, I did see the link, and I only spent a couple minutes looking at it, so I can dive into it deeper and see if I can find the answers if it's not something that you carry in the top of your head.
I don't carry like how much you need to have. Is that what you're asking? How
yeah,
much?
just generally that.
I think it's $1 million, but it is also something that we can, if there's some reason that that doesn't work for your consultancy, then you can bring that up and we can talk about that risk management.
Thank you.
Kind of a similarly related, Karen says that she's a part of a team of independent consultants. What do we need in the way of financial structure? You mentioned needing a W-9 and liability insurance. Anything else, like will we need a fiscal sponsor?
No, you don't need a fiscal sponsor. So one person would need to be designated the lead individual for your organization. If you're a team of independent consultants, yeah. So one person would be the lead. That person would contract with King County, and that person would be the person who would invoice every month, and that you'd be submitting a tracker with all of your the independent contractors' hours on it, and then the money would be issued to that lead person. And so we imagine that there would need to be some kind of contract in place for that to be done. So we would need you to have that contract in place, and we need to have a copy of that contract. I think that the link I sent will provide any other things. The main things were the W-9 and the liability insurance. And those are and you have to have equal employment opportunity rules in place for your organization. And then whoever are the other independent consultants with your firm, who are not on that contract with us, they would be considered subcontractors, and you would need to have specific language in there about equal employment opportunity, for example, and you would need to submit those subcontracts to me as well, and to the other folks.
Can I do a quick time check? I just want to make sure like we had time for elevator pitches. When were those supposed to begin?
2:30.
2:30. Okay, so we got 5 more minutes, and we can post all these questions on the FAQs and answer them. Can I jump to the questions that I feel are less like these sort of like technical questions and more about like the substance of the RFPs or the RFQ? So I'm going to jump ahead to Jonas had a question about examples of technical assistance and capacity building services provided in the past. I'm happy to answer that real quickly. Technical assistance is pretty straightforward. If you have we've had many organizations who see an RFP come out and they're like, oh, can I apply for this? Maybe I want to create a brand new program that I've already had in my mind for a long time, and that would really serve my community, or I already have a program and I'd like to receive BSK funding for it. And they would reach out to you and they would figure out, make sure, is this the right fit? That sometimes it's not a right fit. And then be alerted of future funding opportunities if it's not a right fit. And then together you would work with the community-based organization to help kind of develop the scope of the program, draft and edit the RFP, their RFP, and then work with them on developing their budget. So that's technical assistance. And then once they submit it, it's done. And we don't have any sort of follow-up work, or we expect you to fill out any surveys, because it's just really, really quick rolling. You'll be probably working with a lot of different community-based organizations on that. For capacity building, that is a much wider range of work, and it also has a different time frame for that work. And what we're trying to do by having a letter of agreement is to really nail down solidly what project you're going to work on. Because often when you meet with an organization, you find out like, okay, they need support in figuring out their fundraising strategy. And then as you go along, you find out there are more and more things, and you could end up working with that same organizations for months and months on end, right? So what we want to do is create really, really discrete agreements on like what project you're going to take on now, and then be able to have a completion date for that, so that you can then assess together, was that a good fit? What did the CBO feel like their needs were met? And then you can start on the next project based on your availability, the needs of other CBOs. And so that has a kind of a more elastic time frame, but we're trying to kind of still have a sense of parameters for the work. So one organization isn't constantly working in perpetuity with a particular capacity builder. Did that answer your question, Jonas? Oh, I don't know if they're on anymore. I don't see.
I don't see there. I was wondering though, a follow-up question to that in terms of example, the technical assistant, like you said, seems really clear. One of the things I'm interested in is like data and evaluation capacity building. So can you talk about like, BSK funded organizations and what kind of data work they might have wanted and how the capacity builder supported them?
Sure. Being mindful of time, I'll give a couple quick examples, and I'll mention that we have some more content on the blog if you search the blog with other examples of data support as well. Sometimes some of the biggest projects have been helping a partner organization identify, adopt, and implement a new database system. That one can be a pretty heavy lift and require a lot of technical work. Sometimes it's helping from a more workflow and process level, helping an organization map out like what data are we collecting, what do we want to be collecting, what do we need to be collecting, how are we collecting it, and how can we make that system work better for our staff. And it also can be sometimes smaller projects, like they might need to do a client satisfaction survey for their BSK funded program, and they might need to use some results from that survey to do BSK reporting. And they might say, hey, I've never done this before. Can somebody just help guide me through the process of creating a survey that's going to be culturally responsive for our clients and meet our needs as far as what we want to learn about this work?
Okay. And I'll just jump to one question about, so can you speak about BSK funded organizations, the range of funding, the type of work they might be doing? There is a database that lists all of our awardees, and that gives you a sense of the types of strategies. Our blog is actually quite helpful in offering information about the different programs that we fund and the types of organizations that we have been serving and working with for the last 5 years. And I think that's it. We can post all these questions on the FAQ and then provide answers. A lot of them are pretty straightforward, so we should have the answers pretty readily.
Yes, thanks so much for all these great questions. I wish we could go all day. So let's move forward to elevator pitches. I think I'm going to turn off, or I guess I can't turn off the recording. Sarah J, would you mind turning off the recording?